He's Howard Eibach, author of two books on the creative brief. And he's Henry Gomez, a senior. Let's try that again.
He's Howard Eibach, a former copywriter and creative director and the author of two books on the creative brief.
And he's Henry Gomez, an ad agency strategist with 28 years of experience. Together, Henry and I are the Brief Brothers. We love talking about advertising, creative briefs, and briefing. Henry, we have an unusual guest this time because, well, taxes are right around the corner. The company that she owns is called Creative's Accountant, which I think gives you a hint about what the topic is. Her name is Adeola Mosanya. Let's join the conversation. All right, we are back with another episode of the Brief Brothers, and I am flying solo today. Henry is on the road, but I have as a guest, I guess I will call her a friend because I met her a couple of years ago. Her name is Adeola Mosanya. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
She is the owner, founder, president, grand poobah of an accountancy firm called Creative's Accountant. And I thought this is the perfect opportunity for us to remind creatives and even non-creatives who are really the crux of our viewership that tax time is right around the corner. And we've never done this before. We've never had a chance to really dive into some of the questions and some of the issues that creatives probably face when they are either out on their own, but even when they work for a company regarding their taxes. So I'm very happy to welcome Adeola. She is my personal accountant. Adeola, thanks for joining us on the Brief Brothers.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Let's get started. We almost always begin by asking our guests to tell us a little bit about how they found their way into their line of work. Now, it's usually about, how did you get into advertising? You have a wide breadth of clients in the creative industry and outside the creative industry. And some of them, but not all of them, are in the advertising industry. How did you choose creativity or creatives as the basis of your practice? And tell us how you got started.
Yeah, so my very first business was a fashion line, and I actually initially went to college for fashion and then later changed my major to business and specifically accounting because I figured that, if I had an accounting background, I could do whatever I wanted to do and go be successful in any type of business that I wanted to do. But having that fashion line as my very first business, like I learned the challenges that comes with having a business and being able to stay on top of your finances. And what I also found out is like a lot of times, a lot of people who are in the creative industry, they're not going into a creative type business for them to worry about like the accounting. Although like the accounting is it's important, right? It's the building blocks of your business. It's really important for you to know your numbers. Especially if you don't know your numbers, you don't really have a business. So I was inspired to found Creative's Accountant because I understood the unique challenges that businesses in the creative industries face, and also just the unique like emotional ties like to your business, especially as a creative. And I wanted to be able to reach that specific block and group of people and share my knowledge of accounting and help them with taxes and help them with their books. So, yeah, here I am.
And now, where is here? Where are you located?
I am located in Houston, Texas.
But since I'm in California, that is evidence that you work with people all across the country. I'm gathering you have clients everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have clients all across the country. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, when I moved to Austin, I forget how long ago it was, 2021, and I was seeking out a new accountant. I really wanted to find someone who got me, who understood that I was a creative, specifically in advertising, and understood what the rules and regulations were. I was also an independent contractor, still am, and you have guided me through that. So, what are some of the top most pressing questions that you get from people who are seeking out an accountant within the creative world for the first time, but also, existing clients? What do they ask you?
I think the biggest question on everyone's mind is always like, how can I maximize my deductions? So I don't have to pay more than I have to. I think that's usually the very top one that everyone comes with, whether they're in the creative industry or they're not. So I found that having really good knowledge of the tax the tax codification and staying on top of even just the new laws that are coming out because things are constantly changing, right? It's very helpful in being able to empower my clients as we work on their books and as we work on their taxes.
So creatives have access to certain kinds of deductions for expenses. And, when I first sought out an accountant, long before I met you, I discovered some of these deductions that, quite frankly, surprised me. I was happy to learn that I could do these kinds of deductions. Can you identify a couple, just a handful that maybe most people aren't aware of, especially if they're new to the creative world?
Yeah, I mean, the main question that any business owner should be asking is for your expenses is that is it ordinary and is it necessary for me to run um support for my business to be able to run with any expense. So is it a necessary business expense? Meaning, does that expense empower me or give me the ability to make money? Um, and I think that's the basis of how we look at what can we deduct and what we can't deduct. So for example, if you're traveling to a conference for advertising and it's going to improve your knowledge and improve your skills, you're able to deduct that travel. Um, Now, if you traveled for advertising for the conference and you also did some personal travel with it, then there are nuances with that, right? So we have to kind of divide out what is considered the business travel versus what is considered travel that's related to the business. So yeah, like I think the biggest question to always ask is this is this expense going to help me make more money in my business?
Okay, that's great. So what's another question that you get?
Ooh. Well, it just depends on where people are at, like, with their businesses and like what stage they're at. Um, One of the common ones that I get is, for companies is like, do I categorize this person as a contractor or are they an employee? And one of the key things to note is that an employee is somebody who you set their hours. So you tell them when to show up and they have to show up at that time versus a contractor is, you don't set their hours. It's flexible, right? And of course, I think that I don't want to oversimplify it. This is not accounting advice because each advice that we give to everyone is different and is based off of your particular situation. Um, but that's one of the questions I get. Another one that I get it is, well, um, how do I report my expenses for my business? And the building blocks to that really is ensuring that one, you have good organization within the business and that your business and your personal expenses are completely separated. Um, I can't stress enough how having a good set of books is really the building blocks to your tax return and being ready during tax time. So,
Oh, do I know that myself? And you have done a wonderful job of using your 2x4 to hit me over the head. I mean, when I was first starting out, I don't know how many years ago it was, I did what my dad did. although I didn't use shoebox, my dad kept everything in shoeboxes. This is long before computers, right? He just kept all his receipts and all his records in shoeboxes, and he had a collection of shoeboxes. Well, I started off with shoeboxes, but they took up too much room. So I moved to envelopes, didn't take up quite as much room. But you got me into using spreadsheets and taught
Yeah.
me how to use the spreadsheets. And, I'm a creative. I was an English major. Numbers are just frightening to me. But you were very patient. We had a nice Zoom conversation, which I recorded and I go back to often as you've showing me how to use the spreadsheet. And I'm going to guess that there are people out in our audience who are rolling their eyes at me saying, Howard, how come you didn't learn this when you were in college? And others are saying, yeah, 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 teach me, tell me more, because I don't know anything about this. Because as you said at the beginning, most of us are focused on doing our work. And it's one of the reasons why sometimes we creatives, whether we're in the advertising world or fashion or photography, are terrible at marketing ourselves. So therefore, we're not as good at keeping track of, well, okay, what records do I need to keep? And, I think it was in talking to you that I solidified, came to the conclusion that I needed to create LLCs for my business. So that keeps everything separate. So I have an LLC for my workshops and I have an LLC for my books, which means I have to do more spreadsheets, right?
Well, the good news is that if you don't want to do spreadsheets, there are a lot of um, options for softwares that you can use. And good news is you no longer have to keep a shoebox of receipts. You can
No.
you can take a picture. So with some of these softwares, like QuickBooks is one of my favorite ones. They should shameless plug, they should sponsor the podcast. QuickBooks.
Okay.
But
Well, that would just make my tax situation even worse because then we'd be monetizing this, and that would, more
yeah,
work for you, more work for me. But hey,
hey,
if
yeah,
you're
more
QuickBooks,
opportunity.
if you're listening, what she said.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it's one of my favorite softwares to use. I know there's a range of different ones out there. And it makes it easy, right? You don't have to keep a shoebox of receipts
You're
anymore.
right,
And if you
right.
don't use QuickBooks, you can of course use the beautiful Excel. Anyone who's an accountant pretty much loves Excel. Maybe a little bit too much, but yeah.
Well, I've actually grown more comfortable using it, and it certainly does make my life easier. Are there typical mistakes that we creatives make that are easy to avoid?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the top mistake is like not keeping good records, like not
Mm,
having good books. Because even from stepping away from taxes for 1 second and from a financial standpoint, if you don't know your numbers, then you don't know how well your business is doing. You don't know if you are pricing too low. You don't know if you should be pricing higher so that you can improve your margins and your profits. So there's a lot of benefit to knowing your numbers, and it can help you sort of serve as a benchmark to be like, okay, I did this last year, I did this last year, did not last year, and this is where I want to be in a year or in 2 years. So yeah, knowing your books is extremely important. I think the biggest mistake I see is people waiting till April 15th to to you know start organizing their books, and by that time it's retrospective, right? And we're looking back, and if we bring back the tax layer into it, tax planning is something that should be done actively versus retrospectively. Once the year passes, there's some things we can do, but we have less options than if we're doing it as we go during the year.
yeah, that's absolutely true. Um, so tax preparation is something we should be planning for all year long
Yeah.
and getting an understanding of what records we need to keep. Is there a difference in the perspective that you bring to working with, say, someone like me who has just a one-person operation and say maybe a small agency or a small business? In
Yeah,
the I'm talking now specifically in the advertising field since that's really who our audience is.
I mean, yes. Typically, like if you are self-employed, perhaps the way you may report would be different depending on the structure of your business versus if you're a small agency, you may be considered an LLC or you may be a corporation. It just depends. There are many nuances, and those nuances are specific for each business. So, yeah.
Okay, so tax season is or tax deadline is right around the corner. It seems like it's the last day of January, but all of a sudden April 15th is going to be here before we know it. It's always that way.
Yeah.
What advice? Give us some good advice. What do you advise to all of us creatives who are maybe just now starting to think about this? Is it too late?
No, it's not too late. Get your books in order. Find an accountant that you work well with, um, like that you have good rapport with. Uh, you know, like I like to say that someone that doesn't just care about like collecting your money or whatnot, getting your money. Find someone you have good rapport with, get organized. There are still some tax advantages that you can take advantage of before April 15th. If you think you'll be owing, speak to your accountant about that and strategize and see what you can do. And most of all, start to think of the action points that you can take for 2025 right now. Like we said, tax planning should be active and not retroactive.
Right, right. So if we want to reach out to you and make you someone's new accountant, how do we reach you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, I do have a website and you can reach me at www.creatives with an S accountant.com. I'm on social media as well. You can find me on Instagram. Um, you can find me on LinkedIn as well too. But yeah, my website would be the best way to contact me. My email is on my website.
Okay. Well, we will include all that information when we post the episode, which will be probably, oh, I think this is coming out next week.
Okay,
So
great.
plenty of time for someone who doesn't have an accountant or isn't happy with their current accountant or just wants to get some advice to reach out and get in touch with you. So, Adeola, it's always good to see you. And
Yes.
it's a relief this time to be not talking about my tax headaches, just to be talking about the benefits of having a good tax accountant. So thank you for joining us on the Brief Brothers.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Good stuff, Henry.
Good stuff, Howard.
He's Henry Gomez.
He's Howard Eibach. Together, we're the Brief Brothers. Till next time. Bye bye.